Go as I start. So welcome everybody to our teachers meeting. We have Maureen with us today. She's our vice chair and she's here to work through some theory. She has done a huge amount of work for ANZCA over the years, and she also writes the actual theory papers. So I think it's grade 2, 3, and 4. Is that right, Maureen?
I set grades 2, 3, and 4, and I mark grade 3 and 4.
Yep. So if there's a good person to have on this call, it's definitely Maureen. So what I'd like to do is just welcome her. Everybody, if you could just please be on mute. Remember, we have a chat. So if you've got any questions, it's always best to write your question down in the chat so you don't forget it. We've got some handouts as well that you should have all printed off, ready to go. But I'll just hand it now over to Maureen. Thanks, Maureen.
Thank you, Jo, and welcome everyone to this session. I am something of a theory freak, so I'm always very happy to talk about theory. And I did get Jo to ask you if there were any particular questions that you wanted me to deal with, and nobody seemed to have anything. So I decided to choose 2 of the questions from the grade 3 paper, the cadences and the melody writing, because they are probably the trickiest ones for some of the students to deal with, but also because if they're going on to grade 4, cadences lead to a 4-bar harmony question, 4-part harmony, and also the melody goes from 4 bars to 8 bars at grade 4 level. So, and the melody writing is probably actually the worst question on the grade 3 paper. So I want to deal with that in depth. But first of all, we'll look at the cadences, and I'll just point out some of the problems that we have. Jo, can we put up the first example, please? You should all have copies in front of you. Jo sent them out. So in this question can be asked in 2 ways. They can either be asked to write a cadence in 4-part vocal style, or they may be given 2 bass notes and a key signature, and they have to complete the cadence. So I have chosen just at random 4 papers from the last lot of exams. So not all the problems have come up in the 4, but there's enough, I think, for us to be able to discuss. If we have a look at the perfect cadence in D minor, it's pretty obvious, I think, what the problem is there. Would anybody like to comment?
Leading note isn't raised and it doesn't go to the tonic.
Absolutely. It's perfect cadence in D minor. There should be absolute red flags waving in front of the students when they see a perfect cadence in a minor key, because they have to use the leading note sharp in this case, and the leading note needs to rise to the tonic, which it doesn't. So there's 2 errors there, that there's no sharp for the C sharp, and there's no rising to the tonic. Other than that, the spacing is okay. There mustn't ever be more than an octave between the voices other than between bass and tenor. Looking at the plagal cadence, yes, the notes are all in place, but I like a plagal cadence. If you think of the plagal cadence, pardon? I didn't hear the question. Okay, a plagal cadence is the amen cadence, and it really should fall. The voices should fall rather than rise. So that doesn't sort of sound to me like a true plagal cadence. They don't lose marks for that, but just think perhaps when you're teaching a plagal cadence, it's good to have the soprano voice either falling or the same note. And it's much more realistic for the Amen cadence. Other than that, there's nothing much to comment on that one, except that I just prefer it to fall. Can we have the next example? Right, well, I think it's pretty obvious what's happened. The red flag was waving for the leading note sharp, but it was applied to the wrong note. So I think that's just probably an issue of carelessness. Other than that, the stems are fine and the voices. Always try to keep the voices in as close a position as possible. That's called the voicing. You see there where the tenor voice is the same note. In this case, the alto leading note is rising to the tonic, but the sharp was just obviously placed in the wrong spot. In this case, the plagal cadence, I think, is a good, well-written cadence. The voices are all falling, and everything's correct. Can we move on, Joe? Okay, I don't think there were any problems in that one. And the last one, once again, we see that the leading note sharp is not there, but it does rise to the tonic. You'll notice also, and this is a common fault, there are stems omitted from the soprano and alto voices. Now, either stems are omitted or they are put wrongly. Some people still get mixed up with which direction the stems should go. Other than the missing sharp, that is, oh, and also it was to be written as minims. The soprano and alto voices are not written as minims. So they need to read their questions very carefully and check that they have done everything that is required of them. Once again, the plagal cadence is well done. All voices are falling. There is no problem there, and she did write the minims, or he, whoever it was, did write the minims for all four of the notes in chord 1. Any questions anybody wants to ask at this stage?
Yes, please, Maureen. I notice that there are no upper or lower cases sometimes with the cadences. I believe that major cadences have a line above and below to signify major, and either the no line for the chord 5 and the dots for the chords 1 and 4. Is there a necessity to show the major or the minor, or is that not important? I always make sure mine do, but I was curious to see what your thoughts were.
Well, it's great if they do it, but I don't penalise them if they don't. If they get the 5 and the 1 and the 4 and the 1, I'm happy with that.
Thank you.
Stage. Yeah, I think once they get to grade 4, yes, they can be more precise. But this is their first time of writing chords, and I think they probably have enough else to think about. I mean, in this case, the 1 is obviously correctly done, but I'm not pedantic about that.
And Gregory, you've got a question. Feel free to unmute and ask.
Thank you. In the last plagal cadence, it looks to me in the treble clef as though some of the sharps, particularly the F sharp, is not positioned correctly.
The one that's up on the screen now?
Yes.
Yeah, it's very carelessly drawn. It's meant to be an F sharp, but I really think that some of them are perhaps a little bit careless in their writing of sharps, and if it really is seriously out of place, I do take a mark off, or part of a mark off. In that case, I probably wouldn't have, because it is obviously
Kind of needed.
that the G sharp is above the F sharp, and it is intended. But I think that's why they always need, because they're writing in pencil, they need a fairly sharp pencil, I think, to make sure that everything is very clear. And especially when it comes through as a photocopy, it is very hard sometimes to tell exactly what was meant. But yes, that F sharp is very poorly drawn. In this case, I probably wouldn't take anything off for that. But yes, they should be much more careful. But it is their first experience of writing cadences, so I'm aware of that. But certainly there are certain things that they must know, the stem direction. Certainly, I don't know just how you do it, but a perfect cadence in a minor key, or later on do imperfect cadences in a minor key, they've just got to, so many of them don't remember the leading note accidental. Any more questions?
I really like the bottom example and the way that this student has worked through the question. They've underlined all parts of the question. They did forget about their C sharp, but they've worked out their letters at the bottom there for the minor, D minor. And, you know, just going through, underlining each area of the question, you know, getting the workings out, you know, so that you can, as an examiner, can see what their intention is. I think that's, you know, really, really important if you know, a student is needing to answer, like this is a multi-part question. You know, it's very, very easy to miss something out, you know, like the minims, for example. Perhaps if this student, this first student had circled minims, they'd remember to put the stems on. So yeah, I really like that. And, you know, I encourage my students to do that.
I think it's very good to underline each aspect of the question, but then they've got to go back and check that they have actually done that, because a lot of them do underline each of the requirements and then forget to necessarily do them. So not just the underlining, but also the checking after they've written the cadence or whatever it may be, that they have actually fulfilled all those requirements.
Yeah, so tick them off, like underline things and then tick all of the underlined things off, you know, before you move on to the next.
That's right. Yep. They have plenty of time. There shouldn't be a rush to complete the grade 3 papers, so they should have time to really check everything that they've done to make sure that they have done what they thought they had done or hoped they had done. Any more questions on cadences? They only do 2 cadences at grade 3 level, so there really shouldn't be too much problem in teaching them. Okay, well, perhaps we could move on to the melodies. Can you put the whole sheet up, Jo, for me, and we'll see which one we'll work on first. Okay. Must be the first one. Yeah, we'll look at the first one first. If you can just highlight that one for me. Thank you. Right, they had to write a melody in B flat major. They were given a rhythm and a harmonic progression, and they had to include expression and phrasing marks. Okay, so would somebody like to make a comment on this melody that's on the screen at the moment?
At first glance, without looking carefully, it looks rather angular, and I always tell my students, do not repeat notes. It looks like you don't know where you're going. They've only got one slur and the accent is drawn the wrong way.
Okay.
And they have no dynamics.
Okay. There's a lot in this question. in this example. I think Kerry, I think it was you, Kerry, alluded to the repeated notes. They do a 4-bar melody, and in this particular one, there are at least 3 sets, 1, 2, 4 sets of repeated notes. As Kerry said, repeated notes are not really doing anything. And I think in a 4-bar melody, there should not be any need for any repeated notes whatsoever. And they've got to learn to use passing notes or auxiliary notes instead of repeated notes. To me, it's very uncreative to have lots of repeated notes. I would really look down on any repeated notes in a 4-bar melody. It's got to be tuneful, it's got to be creative, and I think repeated notes don't really do anything. So that's the first thing. Now, I think, Kerry, you said it was rather angular. Have a look at bar. Well, no, we'll do it bar by bar. Look at the harmonic progression in bar 1. C is not a note of the 1 chord.
B, D, F.
So it would have been better in that case to have done perhaps B flat C to D,
D, F.
and use the second B flat as a C passing note. Same thing with bar 2. The second G could have been an F passing note, G, F down to E flat as a 4 notes of the 4 chord. Now, I do not like bar 2 at all. Yes, she's got, the student has got a 1 at the start, but then that F passing note is not really, it's a note of the 1 chord, but then it leaps up a third to a note of the chord 5. And it's more or less an upward progression, almost an octave from the D up to the C. It needs a little bit more shape. It's good for bar 2 to perhaps ascend to a climax point, to a climax note, but not without some shape to it. It needs to drop back and then move up again. Do you understand what I mean by that? Anybody?
Maureen, I always tell my students the climax should be near the beginning of bar 3 rather than the end of bar 2. What would you think of that?
I think it could be, depending on what they're writing, it could be the end of bar 2, but then the phrasing has to relate to that. It can be the start of bar 3. The climax note is the highest note of the melody. So basically the shape is moving upwards and for the first 2 bars and then downwards for the last 2 bars, but not straight down. Like if you have a look, bars 3 to 4, you've got B flat going down to C, all downward movement. And then the passing notes again are wrongly used. For chord 4, you've got the second beat is an A, which is not a note of the chord 4. So they've got to work out the notes of each chord that's required, but then they have to follow the rules in using passing notes. I'm not sure that we actually or suggest auxiliary notes at grade 3. I can't remember, but auxiliary notes are also very useful, and I'll be able to point that out at the end when we come to the final example. Once again, they need to think of it as something they can sing. It's a melody, it should be singable, and I think that perhaps you need to give them lots of examples to work on and then play them on the piano and sing them. or see if they can sing them. Is it singable? This one I think would be very hard to sing because there's a wide sweep up, wide sweep down. And looking at the phrasing, there is one phrase for the whole example. Now, when they have to use phrasing and expression, first of all, I would like a word above the first note.
Recording in progress.
Moderato or scherzando or something to indicate the style. That's part of the expression. The phrasing, I do get a lot of examples where there's one phrase line from the first note to the last note. And I don't think many people would be able to sing the 4 bars in one breath. So I like the phrasing to be more creative. And so often there are examples where there are phrase marks indiscriminately put, but not complete. Some bars don't have any phrasing, and then suddenly you get a phrase, as in this one in bar 2. Maybe the staccato notes give a bit of variety, but where's the rest of the phrasing? So the students need to be a little bit more creative with their phrasing. And I think because I've been making a lot of comments on the report forms about the creative phrasing, I think it has improved a little over the last couple of years, but there's still a lot of room for improvement. Have a look at the expression. From halfway through bar 3 to bar 4, we're suddenly getting louder, but what happened before that? So the expression has to be from start to finish. You've got to know at what volume to start, what volume to finish. You can't just put something in at the end and leave it at that. Also, the accent is as Kerry pointed out, around the wrong way. So there's a lot of problems in that particular one. So just to recap, no repeated notes, more care with passing notes. Do they really understand how to use a passing note? The shape, once again, needs to be a little, I mean, even bar 1 is very abrupt with that 5th interval from the 2nd to the 3rd beat. It needs to have a mixture of notes moving by step and small intervals. But not to have sudden, what I call sudden leaps upward, as in bar 2, and then the rather sharp descending passage bars 3 to bar 4. Now, does anybody want to make any more comment about that particular one? Okay, well, can we move on to the next one? Doesn't matter which one. Joe, thank you. Right, thank you. Once again, if you have a look at this particular one, in 2 bars it goes from B flat below middle C to F above the following C. So it's just, except for one drop back, I think, the G to the F from bars 1 to 2, it basically is moving just up, 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 which would not be very singable, I would think, across that range. I think for a 4-bar melody, you don't want to try and cover too big a range of notes. I would think at the most, keep it within an octave or an octave, maybe, and 2 notes, something like that, but not to try and cover too big a range of notes for 4-bar melody. I think the passing notes in this one are much more successful. You'll see the bar 1, you've got B flat C D, and then you've got E flat F G, which is what we actually discussed in the previous example. Bar 2 is not strictly 1 chord, because in this, at grade 3 level, I think they should be very careful about using the correct notes for the chord. Now, you could look at that and say, well, the F and the A are notes of the, well, no, they're not notes of the 1 chord anyway, are they? They're notes of the 5 chord, so the harmony is wrong there anyway. But if it was a 5 chord, for instance, I wouldn't have the G as the second beat. What that could have been, if it had been a 5, but it actually, looking, I can see it was a 1, I would put the A as the F as the first beat, start the second beat with the A, and then go up to the B flat for the passing note to C. Now, do you understand what I'm saying there? Or Joe, do you want to just write that out perhaps? So it would be F. It's a wrong chord anyway, because it should have been a 1 chord. But if it was going to be a 5 chord, then it should have been an F going to A, B flat, and then up to the C. Bar 3, again, it was a 4, should have been a 4 chord. And that's got a bit astray again. The 1 is okay, and the last bar, most of them got the last bar right. So it's often the middle bars that come to grief in these melodies. Now, once again, there's nothing above the first note to indicate the style. And if you look at the phrasing, once again, there's a phrasing in bar 1, and something a little bit strange phrase from bars 2 to 3, which doesn't make a lot of sense to me, and no other phrasing. Can somebody suggest what might have been a better way to handle, how would you phrase bar 1? Would somebody like to give me an idea of how they would phrase bar 1?
2 small slurs, the 2 quavers and the crotchet, and then again the 2 quavers and the crotchet.
Absolutely. Makes a lot more sense, and it's a lot more musical than having just a phrase line for bar 1, the whole of bar 1. Bar 2, we don't have any phrasing until we get to the last note, and I'm not quite sure why that is linked to the first 4 notes of bar 3. Once again, you could have just the first 2 beats as a phrase, and then the second 2 beats as a phrase. If you look at bar 4, you could do it various ways. You could have the first 2 notes phrased, the second 2 notes phrased, or you could do a 3-note phrase, A, B flat, C, and then a staccato for the A, leading to the tonic. So there are various ways, but I just do not want to see one phrase line over the whole thing. Anybody can do that without needing to know any knowledge of music whatsoever. And even it doesn't make sense to just do 2 bars and 2 bars. So this is why I think perhaps experimenting on the piano sometimes with the melodies that they've written, and let them try different phrasing to see how different it sounds. The expression in this case is quite well done. Start softly as it moves upwards. There's a crescendo, although over that length of an ascending passage, maybe the MF could have been an F. and then softer at the end. So that is quite good from the point of view of expression, except it's missing a word. And most of them do that, by the way. Most of them miss that word at the top to tell how it should be played, the style. Any other comments on that one? Okay, can we move on to the next one, Joe, please? Okay. Looking at that one, well, my first comment would be there is no phrasing attempted at all. And that does happen in a lot of examples that I see. Also, would anybody like to comment on the expression?
There's far too much.
Far too much. You'd be flat out trying to do all these getting louder, softer, soft, getting louder. It's overdone. We don't need that much. 3 or 4 expressions of dynamics are sufficient for a 4-bar melody. I mean, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different indications there, and it's way overdone. So it's good they've attempted to do it, and it's actually quite well done in that she's used crescendos for upward passages and decrescendos for downward passages, but it doesn't need to have that much in a 4-bar melody. Phrasing, there is none again, but we've talked a lot about phrasing, so it would be easy to see how that can be done quite neatly. The bar 3, once again, moving upwards almost an octave without any backward move. There should be more shape. I just don't want to see a whole bar just going straight up. Bar 1, the harmony on the second half of the bar, it should have been a 4, but the C is not a note of the 4 chord. A little bit astray in bar 2. Once again, it should have been a 1, and the A is not in the 1 chord. Thank you, Joe.
Maureen, could you consider the A as an accented passing note? While they don't know about this, it could be such.
You could, Kerry, but I think at grade 3 level, I like them not to, yes, you and I would consider it as an accented, or could use it as an accented passing note. They don't know about it. And I think that they need to, at this level, follow the rules so that when they get further on, they know how to I was going to say break the rules, or how to, use things like accented passing notes. I don't want to see it at grade 3 level, because I think they're not showing an understanding of what they should be doing. I notice there's an auxiliary note used on the 3rd and 4th bars. Sorry, 3rd and 4th beats of bar 2. I'm not sure that we asked them for auxiliary notes at grade 3. I can't remember now, but that is perfectly acceptable. And I think that that's always very handy to be able to use an auxiliary note at times. I think bar 3 should have been a 4 to a 1, and that's okay, except that it just moves up. And then bar 4, I think, is most of them. No, I don't like bar 4 either, because there's a B flat. Once again, Kerry, yes, it's an accented note there, but I don't think at this stage that they're showing that they are understanding what they're doing. So I wouldn't use that B flat there. Could have perhaps come down to the F, back to the A and up to B flat, something like that, make that B flat into an F.
Or they could have done a B flat passing note for the second quaver, getting to the A on the third quaver, then
Yep.
going back to the C
Yep.
on the fourth quaver.
Yep.
While I've got the mic open, what do you think about the climax note being in bar 1?
No, I don't like that. I don't think you should have a climax note in bar 1. Your highest note of the melody shouldn't be in bar 1. And in this case, it sort of goes right down bars 2 to 3. You're at the, or probably it's a reverse climax, isn't it? And that they go down to the lowest note on the first note of bar 3. So it is acceptable in this case because she has used, I keep saying she, but he or she has used a reverse climax point. But no, I don't like bar 1 particularly.
That's what I was going to ask you. Can you indeed have a reverse climax?
Yes, why not?
Thank you.
But, you know, it's just not well done here because then she's gone from the reverse climax note almost up an octave in one bar. And that needs to have more shape to it. Okay, I think we've probably covered most of that one. Can we have the next one, Joe? Now, this one at least has got a direction telling me that it's going to be moderato. So well done for that. Once again, the climax note is in bar 1. And the the passing note in beat 3 is not properly used because a passing note must be between, it would have to be a C rather than a B flat for that to be a correct passing note. And it was a chord 4, so then the harmony would have been wrong. So they just have to juggle things around so that the passing note is correctly used. The passing note's got to be either a note of the chord that it should be, or it's got to be the note between, it's got to move by step, basically.
I tell my students that's a nothing note, and I tell them every note must have a function. It should be a note of the chord, a passing note, or an auxiliary note. And
Yep.
if you cannot assign one of those functions, it's a nothing note.
Yeah, and you have to do something else. Okay, bar 2 is a 1 and then a 5. But the last note of bar 2 is the leading note, and the leading note should rise. In this case, it doesn't. So there's a problem there. Bar 4 is not a 5-1, it's a 4-1. So the harmony is wrong there. Phrasing, you know, it just, I just quite can't understand why there's a phrase mark in bar 3 and one in bar 4. What about bar 1 and 2? Once again, it lends itself to the phrase over the first 2 beats and over the second 2 beats. Bar 2, the same thing. It's just not complete. And in this case, we've gone from the last example with too much expression to this example with no expression. But and also, if you look from bars 3 to bar 4, you've got a D down to a B flat down to an E flat. You've got a really huge leap down. Two big intervals next to each other just doesn't work very well. It needs to be much, the notes need to be much closer. Small intervals or move by step, but not two intervals downwards like that one. It just doesn't work. And it didn't need to come down to the E flat anyway. It could have come down to the F, but even so, it's still a big leap, but it would have been much better. But the D to a B flat to an E flat just doesn't work. Okay, how many examples have we got? Jo, is that the last one, or have we got one more? I've lost count.
Yes, that one's the last one, Maureen.
That one's the last one. Okay. Could we bring up then the answer? Yep. We do publish each year the answers. There's no one answer, of course, to writing a melody. There's all sorts of ways of doing it. But what we do is give an example of what could have been done. And if you look at this one, we've got allegro at the beginning telling us it needs to be fast. If you look at the phrasing, exactly as Kerry suggested, the 3 notes per phrase, and then bar 2 with the quavers separately phrased. The 4 quaver notes with 1 phrase, staccatos for the 3rd and 4th beats. And the same with bar 4, the 4 quavers as 1 phrase, and then the last note with an accent. And there's 4 indications underneath, MFP, MF and RAL at the end. 4 is probably as many as you would want, I think. Oh, I'm sorry, there's a question here, should staccato and accents. You don't have to do staccatos and accents. I think it adds a little bit of character to the piece if it's done well, but no, it's not essential. The accent at the end is sometimes nice to have, but no, I would say it's not necessary to have accents, not necessary to have staccatos, but it can add to the character of the piece to do so. So I hope that answers that question. And you'll notice with this example, for instance, there's notes moving by step and there's small intervals. I think the biggest interval is a 4th, which is used twice. Other than that, it's pretty much.
Maureen, could I make a comment,
Yes.
please?
Yes.
I would have said if a student gave me this, the bar 2 was too angular, because simply using the notes of the triad is not very inventive.
Yeah. But if you look at the other bars, they are not. So I think if you do it sparingly, it's okay, but some of them will do it for every bar. Only use the notes of the chord, and there's no passing notes or auxiliary notes. I think you can do it a little bit because it does give more variety as well. But I wouldn't do it in more than 1 bar.
Cynthia makes a very good point. There are 2 climax notes, and the first one is in the first bar.
Yeah, there are. In this case, it's. I would say that probably in this case they're not used as climax notes. Yes, they are the highest notes in the melody, but it's in this case acceptable because it's not a note that suddenly goes much higher. It's moving by step. So that to me is acceptable. Okay, well, that's all the examples that we have. Is there anything now that anybody would like to comment on?
I know that this is a question that's hard to answer, especially in the moment. But how would you assess those melodies? I mean, the melody, I mean, unless I've missed out on some reading, which probably is highly likely, it's out of 10. There's 4 bars. How do you actually mark this?
Well, first of all, I look at it from the point of view, is it 6 out of 10 is a pass mark. So I look at whether it's a pass or not passable. So 6 is sort of like the benchmark. I do deduct a mark if there's no expression, and I do deduct a mark if the phrasing is attempted, they don't lose a mark, but if it's not attempted at all, they lose a mark because that's a major part of the question. And then it's a matter of assessing how well they have shaped the melody, constructed the melody, their use of the harmonic progression. So though taking all those things into consideration, I've then got to consider, is it above 6 or is it below 6? Does that help? Any comments? No comments? But where possible, I do try to give at least a 6. But if it's not quite there, it might be a 5.5.
Anne Gregory's got a question.
Hi, Maureen.
Yes, Anne.
It would help me if you could, the examples that you gave us today, are you able on those examples to give an estimate of what the mark or mark range might have been for them? The 4?
Oh, well, can we go
One
back?
of them each? One of them?
Can we go back to them, Joe? I can't remember. These are 4 that I just chose at random. Okay, we've got one on the. Well, first of all, the phrasing and the expression would lose 2 marks.
Maybe we should all sort of just think how we would assess this and see how different we all are too. That's a nice exercise.
Who would pass that one? Anybody like to make a comment? Kerry? Oh, Pamela. Yeah. Any other comments? Pamela thought it was okay.
Hey, can I ask, must the climax be always in the middle, or could it be like at the end?
It could be at the end. Yes, it definitely could be at the end. Absolutely. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So there are 2 possibilities for the climax, right? At the middle or at the end.
Yeah. No, I'd be happy with the climax at the end. Absolutely.
Okay. How about like the climax in the middle and then it ends softly?
Yes, if you have the climax in the middle, it's got to work up to the climax and then down to the end, or the anticlimax, where, although to my mind it doesn't quite work as well, but you could have a reverse, as we saw in one of the examples, a reverse climax. note where it goes down and then up again. It doesn't quite make as much sense to me, but it can be done.
And Maureen, in answer to your question, I've just deducted 8 points for things that have been incorrect. Then I've given them 2 sympathy marks back because it's only grade 3. So I gave them 4 out of 10.
Yeah. Look, you're probably on the right track. I think there's a problem with passing notes. I certainly don't like bars 3 to 4 that leap down. I wouldn't pass it. But because it's their first melody, I tend to, not be too harsh. But I'd probably give that one maybe a 5.
Hi,
You are
Maureen.
more generous than I.
Well, as I say, I've got to take into consideration it's the first time they've done a melody. That one, I certainly would maybe take, she's attempted expression, I would take off at least half a mark. There's no phrasing, so that's another mark, 1.5. What about the rest of it? Is that a pass? Anybody like to make a comment?
Miss Maureen, may I share?
Yes, certainly.
Yeah, is it possible if I put the soul on the code 4 in bar 1? Although that is a falado, I know the soul is not there, but I just want to keep the next note on chord, the mi on chord 1 at bar 2. So is it like la fa sol? La fa sol, mi do mi re ti sol. Is it possible I put the sol before the mi on bar 2? Before it has burned on bar 2, mi, if I. Do, mi, sol, la, fa, sol.
So what note do you want to change? You want to change something in bar 2?
The sol on the last note of bar 1.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Is that possible or can or not? Just asking only. La, fa, sol. Though is a falado, I know it's a chord 4 is falado.
Yeah, well, that chord is wrong anyway. That C shouldn't be there because that's not
La, fa, do.
not a note of the 4 chord.
So it's not possible for sol before the mi on bar 2, right? I think other ways.
So would be an F.
Okay.
So which note would you make the F? The so. I'm not quite sure which note you want to make the so. The last note of bar 1 or
One.
bar 2?
Bar 1, yes.
Bar 1. So
Yeah.
Pamela, are you
Do,
using a fixed or movable dough? A fixed dough or a movable dough?
Victor.
Fixed
Oh.
dough. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
yeah, that would all have to be changed because bar the 4 chord on the 3rd and 4th beats is not correct. So although the first 2 beats are correct, that's a chord 1. But then you'd have to have had a yes, you'd have to have for chord 4 you need E flat, G, B flat. So she's got the E flat, but not any other note of that chord. So that whole thing would have to be changed. Could have done an auxiliary note, E up to F, the so on the D, that one. No, the next back, Joe. Yeah, that note could have been an F and then back to E flat. And that would have been better. But then you've still got a fairly wide sweep down in bar 2 from the E flat down to F. There's a little bit of shape there, but not a lot. It's a fairly drastic downward leap, I think, or plunge, I should call it. And then if you look at bar 3, once again, it's going up from the E flat to the D. in one bar. That's almost an octave in one bar upwards without any shaping basically there. So let's get back to the, no, can we still go back to the other one? Yeah, thank you. So would that be a pass, do you think?
Absolutely not.
Okay, now the questions come up. I'm wondering, how do you ideally do the so note in a, oh, can we leave that there, Joe? The question?
I haven't moved it. Sorry.
It's disappeared, so I can't see it.
Oh, I'm wondering, how do you ideally do the so note in a chord, but not have two big intervals between do and so, more than the 4-note interval?
Well, why would you necessarily have to go from do to so?
Mm.
You can use other notes of the chord, of the 5 chord, without going from the actual tonic do to the tonic so. So I'm just not quite sure. Okay, to include the chord notes, this is from Linda. And that's all I can see. Sorry, I can't see the rest of the question.
That's all that we have at the moment.
Okay.
So not
Yeah.
chord, but not having to begin between the do and so on and two.
So you can go to the 5 chord, the so chord, but you don't have to go to the actual tonic of the chord. So I'm wondering if you're thinking it has to go to the tonic of the chord. It doesn't. It can go to a note of the so chord, but just be careful if you use the third of the chord, which would be the leading note. That the leading note then has to rise to the tonic. Okay, well, that one I probably would, using 6 as the benchmark, I'd probably give it a 5.5. I can't remember what I did give it, but I think there's just a few too many errors there.
Maureen, can I ask, do you need the second last note of the melody be the leading note?
Oh,
or can it have
okay, but
still
not
a
this
lead?
one. Yep. Well, as I said, you don't have to use the tonic of the chord. You can use any note of the chord. So that gives you 3 notes to choose from. Valerie, your question got lost.
I would pass all of them because their works are reasonably done. The paper is 2 hours. The student would apparently do this in 15 to 20 minutes out of the 2 hours.
I think if they've practiced them beforehand, it's not something that they're just doing for the first time ever. I would hope that they would have done lots and lots of practice. So it shouldn't take, I think 20 minutes would be reasonable if they've had lots and lots of practice. My experience of theory papers, and I probably haven't supervised for a long time, but students used to finish well within the time frame that was set for the exam. I don't know, I can't speak for now. Cynthia. Oh, thanks, Cynthia.
Yes, we are running
Hi, Maureen.
our time.
Oh, okay.
It is already 11:30.
Okay. Okay.
Look,
Well,
it is kind of, how long is a piece of string type of question, but I think it's very important that we ensure that our students actually answer the question, you know, and making sure that everything that, again, is within the question is in the answers appropriately.
Yeah.
I have no idea how I would mark a melody, you know, in significant detail over and over and over again, like Maureen and others that are assessing the theory would have to do. But I think as teachers, if we make sure that our students are following the rules, following the chord progression, and including all of the elements within that question, that multifaceted question, and then to be able to sing it, I think, you know, that's without any jarring, without any harmonic sort of jarring. I think that's you know, a good starting point.
And Gregory just made a good point. It flashed up and it's gone now, but I think it was basically, if you follow the rules, then it's going to be a good melody. It's going to sound right. So that is why marks are deducted for things, as Jo just said, if the harmonic progression is not followed, if there's no expression or phrasing marks, or they're not well done, then I think it's going to affect the melody itself. So by following the rules, and I hate that word rules, but by following them, which they need to do when they're starting out on melody writing, they need to follow the rules to be able to write a proper melody, a musical melody, then everything else will fall into place. If they don't follow the rules, like the one on the screen at the moment with the upward leap in saying about all the repeated notes, they haven't followed the rules and the melody is certainly not good. So that's how you balance it out, basically.
Okay.
I think basically they do need to understand passing notes much more than a lot of them do. So that's something, if as teachers, perhaps you should work on, because a lot of it depends on knowing how to use passing notes. Okay, well, thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, everybody, for attending. As you know, this will be recorded, so you can go back and have a look at it again. As always, if you do have any questions after these sessions, just email us at the office and we can pass that on to Maureen or answer it ourselves. I'm more than happy to spend more time on this because it is such a big part of the theory training. Thank you very much, Maureen, for, you know, answering all of those questions. Music is, you know, we like it or we don't like it. And, you know, a lot of these things can be a little bit subjective. Is that the word? I think, I don't know.
Yep.
But I think, you know, if we do follow the rules and we ensure that every part of the question is answered, then we're sure to be on the right track. So thank you very much, Maureen.
And just if they go on to grade 4, they need to be able to write a melody, a good melody at grade 3 level. Otherwise, writing an 8-bar melody at grade 4 level is going to be far too daunting.
Next month, we're going to do a bit of a change to our routine. We potentially won't be doing theory again next month. As you know, we've got a lot of changes in store for us. We've got the competition and we've got the diplomas that are being rolled out and everything. And so we are likely to use next month's session with May Gavin as our guest to go through those things in more detail. So just keep an eye out. I'll certainly pop that up on Facebook so that you know what's happening next month as soon as we do. But in the meantime, enjoy the rest of your week and we'll see you again soon. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. I'll end the meeting for everyone, Maureen, and then if we want to debrief, we can do that again. We can hop back
Okay.
on. Yeah,
Okay.
or hop on the phone.
Phone. Yep. Okay.